Welcome to Interruptions Podcast, where we have heartfelt discussions about our culture and faith traditions and our community. We invite guests who are open and willing to share their journey and disrupt the silence on their personal and professional interruptions that have impacted their lives. Kathy and I are passionate about every episode and committed to providing actionable advice that you can apply today to reinvent yourself on your life's journey. This is our second podcast in our celebration of Black History Month, and I am one of your co hosts. I am Reverend Odell Montgomery Cooper.
And I'm Kathy Patton, and thank you for joining us.
And welcome, Black History Month again.
Well, you know what? Before you even say that, I just want to congratulate you on the presentation that you did last evening. Can you tell me about the group that you did that for? You did a wonderful job. Wonderful job.
Oh, thank you. It was with Connect,
Okay.
Congregations Organized for a New Connecticut, which I have been a member of for about at least 20 years or more. So
Yeah.
we have two sub teams on gun violence and mental health, and they wanted to sponsor a conversations with Odell, Reverend Odell, and Interruptions to talk about our faith, our culture, and gun violence, and what we need to do. As you were there, you saw what we can do differently as people of color and being in our faith journey to help individuals that look like us and to be different about trauma, grief, and mental health. So
Yeah,
I
and I know
was
they had
their
a
guest.
breakout. I know they had a breakout room. I had to leave at that time. I'm sorry, but I know that you had a lot of questions coming in for you. So I know did you feel overwhelmed? Because there were a lot of questions coming in at you.
I did not. My the one that was navigating Liz Keenan, Dr. Liz Keenan, and I, we worked well together, so we knew what was going on. So she was channeling all the questions to me, and I had a chance to breathe in between. So it was well rehearsed, but I heard it was the feedback was very good.
It was. It
So
was.
it was
It was.
about talking about interruptions. And the message that I'm trying to share is that of people of color, we have to do more than just tell people to pray more for traumatic events and knowing the right things to say. And just because we are told we're strong, we're educated, we're professionals, doesn't stop us from asking for help. And
That's right.
especially the church doing more than just telling us to pray more.
That's right. That's right.
So
Well, I
thank
know,
you.
talk about throwing you off guard. I know I threw you off guard with that, but
You
you did a
always
great
do
job.
that.
But I wanted,
Th-
well, I wanted to recognize that. I know it wasn't a Black History
Thank
moment, but it
you.
was a special moment for you. So I wanted to make sure I recognized that. And so, yes, we are in Black History Month. We are 1 month in from having
Yes.
our new elected president, President Joe Biden, and of course, our Vice President Kamala Harris. So still very excited. You still excited, Odell?
I am, and excited about our guest because falls right in line with all these wonderful PBS specials that have been going on this month that I've been staying up late watching. So we have to always say this is our 18th podcast.
That's right.
And our special guest today is Dory Dumas, who is the president of the local chapter, the New Haven chapter for the NAACP. And so her being some of the first, and we've been talking about the first for this elections, and it's just again an exciting journey, especially being that Vice President Harris is a AKA, and I'm surrounded by women of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. You know, always have to give acknowledgement and kudos, and you've got to just feel good about where we are.
That's right.
Yes. So before we even start talking, because you and I can get started, and I want to make sure that we bring Dory into the room and invite Dory into our conversation.
Good evening, ladies. Thank you for having me, and I'm doing well.
It's always a pleasure to see you again virtually. It's been a virtual
Yes,
world.
absolutely. And
D-
thank you all for this space of interruptions. It's needed. I have seen some of your podcasts, and it's wonderful. So thank you for this space.
Thank you. Thank you for watching us and sharing. We're and as Kathy's sorority sister, I really hope that she expects you to spread the word. So she's
Absolutely.
trying to get an increase of subscription. But we're up to
Absolutely.
120. So we're getting
Yay.
there. Okay.
Very
But Dory, before we start, with honor, I received an email and I need to congratulate you on your founding. You all are celebrating the New Haven chapter is celebrating 112 years. And 112 years, look who's at the first. So, congratulations.
Thank you for
And
that. And thank you. NAACP has been doing this work, and the local chapter, state chapter, we continue to do the work of the NAACP, and we're proud to do so.
yes, it's well needed. It's like I'm not sure if you mentioned earlier or a previous conversation. It's sad that we need it, but it's a great thing that we have it because of the history. So
Absolutely.
this month I've been excited. As Kathy and I were planning this podcast, she was typing and I'm talking, and I said, "Oh, did you see the PBS special about Marian Anderson? Did you see it yesterday or the day before?"
I absolutely did. She is an honorary member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and she's from Connecticut. And she is another woman who's the first who broke the glass ceiling and has such a phenomenal legacy and history. And actually, one of the members who was speaking about her when she attended Yale, Dr. Alicia Lola Jones, she was speaking about her. She was here at Yale and in our chapter. So I had
Really?
a lot of pride watching that. It was very exciting.
I learned so much. It's so good to always learn more about your history that you didn't know. And what I was impressed with, I kept telling Kathy, at the time, the national president was Walter Francis White.
Yes.
And I Googled him today to make sure that I had information accurate because I didn't want anybody getting on, making comments that Reverend Odell doesn't know her history. She need to join the chapter. She's giving misinformation. So I learned that Walter Francis White was the president for 26 years, from
Yes.
1929 to 1955. And the piece that it just motivated me was when they wanted Marian Anderson to sing in the Capitol. But
Yes.
there was this Coliseum, and I'm sure I'm saying that piece wrong, that was only the only place large enough to hold her. And it was run by the daughters, I'm gonna make sure I got this correct, the daughters of the American Revolution. They would not allow her to perform because their rules were white only. And the president at the time, Walter White, was a fan of Marian Anderson, but he said, in which we're going to talk about later, he said it wasn't within the mission of the NAACP to start the boycott or to start that fight, but he was the agitator behind it. And Kathy, what ended up happening was the DAR would not change their rules, whites only, and what happened was the NAACP arranged with the president at the time to have her sing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, the first kind of like outdoor concert. And that's where she performed. And it was just marvelous. It was
It was
marvelous.
beautiful. It was so moving. I think they said it was over 17,000 people showed up. And, then they didn't have the kind of ways that we have to get the word out. And Howard University and some of the local churches
Yes.
helped to spread the word. And so that wasn't an easy task, but to see how many, it was a sea of people. And to see her standing up there in front of the Lincoln Memorial just was beautiful and moving. And I'm glad that they found a way to move forward and not to accept that she could only sing in this place or only in that place, and to do it outside where so many people could just come and enjoy the beauty of her voice.
That's right. And they said they had never happened before, didn't know how to do it. So they were telling porters, railroad folks, maids, and those were the ones that were like texting. Those were our texters today.
Right.
Those were our social
The Pullman
medias.
porters and all of those that worked out there. Yeah, and that's how they got the word out.
That's
But they
how
made it happen, and it was absolutely beautiful. It was a sea of people, and it was beautiful.
it was. I'm glad you watched it because we can talk about it some more. And I was telling Kathy, you got to see the show.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, we're proud and congratulations that, I always have to give acknowledge to our first vice president of color and who is another member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. Did I say it slow enough for you, Kathy?
No, that was
Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, you know,
incorporated.
and oh, incorporated. I
Yes,
apologized,
ma'am. Hmm.
So yes, I do apologize. And but it's all a part of Divine Nine. And as we
Yes.
were talking about, Dory, you joined so many first in our history. Kamala Harris, President Obama, Senator Warnock, and you will be going down in history. So how do you feel about that?
You know, again, mixed emotions around it. I took on this position, and it's just sad that it took so long for a woman to rise to this position. Women have always been in the forefront. Women have always been the ones organizing, demanding change, doing a lot of the work. So we've always been there throughout history. So it was nothing new to see a woman doing the work, taking the lead, but to actually have the position. Now that was new, and I took on this role. But being the first, I take it with honor, and I do the work of the NAACP from my heart and with honor, and trying to upkeep the mission of the NAACP moving forward, and trying to even the playing field and make sure that all the things that we want, all the advancements we want, the wins we want to see, that we do that work.
I can't wait to delve into a little bit more about that, but I have to ask you, you've been a member before you became president and you've been in Connecticut. Are you from Connecticut, New Haven?
Born and raised right here in New Haven, Connecticut.
Okay, Dory, so tell me what took 119 years? Why, know,
You
when
know
I
what?
when
112,
I
right?
came to 112, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
I
no.
came, Jim Rollins was the president, and he was working at Yale, and that I knew. And after Jim, I don't know who became president. But 112 years, first woman. What took so long?
Right. So, again, I don't think that there were always women who could have easily stepped into the role and the position. The NAACP is like a lot of universities, organizations. There's still a lot of male chauvinists, and there's still a lot of male dominance. And sometimes people don't always have open arms when it comes to a woman's leadership. I certainly faced some of that when I came into the role.
Okay.
People certainly treated me differently, did not receive my authority the same. And although they knew the work, because I have been an active member of the NAACP for over 20 years. I had been the first vice president, and people saw the work and knew that I was capable of it. So I don't think that was ever an issue that we had anyone that could not handle it. But there's just something about when a woman rises and how people receive it. I have since, I think, really earned everyone's respect as a president, but
Okay.
it took a little time, even for women, and how women treated me and how people received
Hmm.
what was happening from a male's perspective versus a woman's perspective. And I think
Okay.
that's across the board with things.
I believe I know that to be true. And Kathy and I both know that to be true. Working in the fields that, especially the role that she came from, working professionally before she wonderfully retired. But Dory, you've been in this role now as president for 5 years. So how are you preparing for your predecessor?
So I am constantly mentoring, and really trying to, again, this is a lot of work. This is a volunteer organization, but the work we do is so very important and it's needed. So one, I try to find the people that that we select on our board who understand our mission, who care about our community, who care about the issues and the mission of the NAACP. So once I have that, then I'm really trying to mentor and put other men and women Right now, we have majority women. So right now, I'll say the young women on my board to really try to move them forward, to give them more responsibilities. A lot of them, when I came on in 1999. So I have been a member of the NAACP for a very long time. So Roger Van,
I
back
remember
in
Roger.
the 90s, he was the youngest in the country to ever be president of the branch and then the state president. He was in his 20s. And so he was he did a great job, and his team did a great job with getting people to be members of the NAACP. And so they would come to our church. They would make sure we knew that they were doing the work. So because I saw them and they were young at that time, and really I understood the passion and the mission, I was a member. But I became an active member in 1999. I was a member of
Okay.
Alpha Kappa Alpha, Jack and Jill, active in my church. And somehow they got me to come. And once they got me to come, they wouldn't let me go. They wouldn't, they kept saying, giving me response, same thing I'm trying to do. But, I think that I understood just how important the work is, just how
Okay.
important that it is. So that was easy for me. I'm trying to get others to see that, if we want to keep opening up doors, if we want to keep seeing advancements, somebody has to do the job, do the work. And
Okay.
so that's how I try
And
her.
I'm sure, and I didn't mean to say predecessor, I meant your successor, someone to take over and you're grooming
Hmm.
to take over for you.
Yeah.
So yes, we know it's a lot of work, and I forgot Roger was the president as well. I do
Mm.
remember that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a while ago. You know, Odell, and it wasn't that long after Dory got into her position. I think that Dory, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we were at our Boulé conference in Atlanta, and we were walking around the vendor area, and they had us area that was uh, cordoned off just to recognize special women, prominent women, and Dory's picture was hanging there, and she was so surprised. She had no idea that that picture was going to be there, and it was just such a proud moment because it was just her and I walking around, and I think that was one of our largest conferences, right? I think
That
we had
was
over
one of our largest
30,000.
conflicts. It blew me away. It touched me. I was shocked. I didn't even realize that at the national level, they even knew who I was. Although I knew when I became the first president of the Greater New Haven branch that a couple of articles were done on me, and and I guess through Google things just get out there. So I had no idea that our national international office even knew that I was first or would honor me. They did not ask, tell me, or anything. It was so, I just
Mhm.
happened to be there. I walked in, and what a sense of pride. It was beautiful. Kathy could tell you I was elated, and,
Yeah.
and, and I really felt a strong sense of pride about it. So it was awesome.
And then it was funny because other members were walking by and, oh, that's her. That's her. 'Cause
Funny. Yeah,
you
and I
know, we
mean,
had to
at
stop
our
and start
convention,
taking pictures, and
thousands
and they're
at
saying, "Oh,
an
did you
international
know that's
convention.
you?" So it was great. It was a wonderful moment. So, Dory, let me ask you, because of course I've known you longer than Odell. Um, but we talk about often in our podcast that our journeys and how our journey, we can have one plan and then our journey changes. And when we were growing up, we always share how the plan was that you go to school, you go to college, you meet your husband, you get married, you have the 2.5 children, the dog and the white picket fence, and
Yeah.
you live a perfect life, right? And we know that sometimes that doesn't happen. Life changes. So you went to Albertus Magnus College.
Yes,
Now, what was your
I did.
plans? Yeah, what were your plans going through college? Like, what was your idea? Did you have a plan at all when you came out of college?
So I knew that in order for the advancement I wanted in my career, and I needed to have my degree. So it was in economics. I've always had, the business side, but my heart was always in the community. So even while I was at Albertus, even while I was at Hill House High School, I was always a part of the community. At my church, I was very active. I was the scholarship chair. I was always planning. the Kwanzaa events and different things. So community service, uplifting our community, our culture has always been a part of the things that I love and my passion. So even at Alberta's, I was always active. And so becoming a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha with like-minded women who also wanted to help uplift the community just fit right into the things I already knew I wanted to do in my community. So it was already things I can see in the future, which is why I pursued it. And very fortunate to become a member. And from that point forward, have been working with community service and uplifting the community.
Okay. How about life journeys? Has
Mhm.
there been any surprises that, for me, we talk about where clearly about Odell's situation where she lost her son, and not even never thinking about that. And then when I got married, of course, we had our children exactly the way we wanted. I wanted a boy first and then a girl, but then my journey got altered because, of course, Teal has autism, and so we talk about the struggles of that journey in life. So, has there been any struggles or journey that might have altered than what you initially thought? Okay, I'm going to, we all have our dreams, right? I think I was supposed to be the Queen of England, but that just has not worked out for me. Or at least the
So,
first princess,
so
but
what people, yeah, so part of my journey is that I had my daughter when I was 19 years old. So I started out as a single mom, and I knew I wanted more for her and for myself. And so then, I stayed in school. I had to go part time for, when she was a baby, and then I went back to full time. So I had some things where I had to adjust. I lost my grandmother who raised me, who I lived with at 19, and I had to figure out life, the next steps as an adult. And then, at that time, my husband was in college. So we were trying to figure out how to, one, raise our daughter, and then how to move forward. So I always had a strong faith. So I will say faith and courage are part of my journey, and believing that every time I thought things were going to get too much, God just opened up a door and showed me the way. And so early on, the journey was just trying to make sure I can get through school, have a full time job. A full time job, I had a baby, and then we ended up getting married a few years later, and then together we figured it out. We purchased our first home when we were like young, and just decided what we wanted and the steps we wanted in our life. And God just, ordered our steps. Things were able to move forward, and we never missed a beat, and we were able to move that way.
I'm glad it's I'm glad you shared that story with us, for our listeners, because there are, the perception of a teenage mother years ago was
Mhm.
very different than a teenage mother now. And people think because you're a teenage mother that you can't pursue your dreams, that you're kind of stuck, life is over.
Mhm.
And I liked how you mentioned a full-time job. I wanted a full-time career. I'm not looking for a part-time. I want a full-time, and it's achievable. And I enjoy listening and hearing you say it was hard work. I'm sure things didn't go as smooth as you wanted, but you persevered. You kept going. And when people hear what we talk about, interruptions, they're not always negative interruptions. It's you had a baby. That's not a bad thing. It maybe
It's
had been not the timing you wanted, but you had a child out of love and you
Yes.
had a
Mhm.
partner in your life and you end up getting married, finishing college, and keeping God in your life.
That's
And
right.
people today seem to think either I don't need God or I don't need a man, you know and it's not saying that you need them, but you had a great partner in your life who ended
Right.
up being your husband, so congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
I know it wasn't easy, and
Mhm.
but you kept faith, because that is very important.
Yeah.
So couple of questions for you. So you talked earlier, we talked about the Marian Anderson
Mhm.
story and all the work that the NAACP had to do to get her to be outside on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. You
Right.
know, and you mentioned that when Roger Van was the president, he was visible. You
Mhm.
saw him, you knew him. Everybody knew and saw him, and that's how you got excited. Some people say, and this is no attack on you, no shade on you and your 5 years, but some people are saying, "Where's the NAACP? I don't see them. Where are
So
they?" So
yeah,
what do you say to responses like that, Dory?
so thanks to social media and to really the outlets we have now, I really think that people cannot say that because we invite people to like our pages to find out what we're doing. We are in the newspapers, we are in the church, even through Zoom. So right now, because of COVID-19, we're not physically able to be in places, but the work has not stopped. The NAACP is a volunteer organization, but I put just as many hours a day into the work of the NAACP sometimes as I do for my full time paid job. So it's
Mhm.
ongoing every day. We are very active in our community year round. So it's not just around elections or when something happens. So the work that we do with the NAACP, thanks, and I really want people to visit our website, to go to our pages. I'm grateful when we get the press, we get a lot of. So the newspapers, between the TV stations and newspapers and the radio, people get to hear about us and see the work that we're doing at the
Mhm.
national level. Because of COVID-19, people get to see our national president, Derek Johnson. He's on all of the major news outlets weekly talking about the work of the NAACP, talking about the efforts that we're doing, the work that we're doing, the legislation that we want. So, and at the state level, you'll see us, even though we're not able to physically be at the Capitol, we're in these meetings.
Okay.
So our voices are heard and we are out there. And a lot of times people are like, I don't really understand, what the NAACP is doing until they need us. Then they call, like something goes wrong. We're one of the first people they call. But we're needed just as much now as we were when we were founded because of all of the discrimination, racism, and things that are happening daily. We get complaints. So a lot of times we're behind the scenes and we're working
Okay.
on legislation. So people don't always see that part of it, but we're doing the work.
Okay. So on that note, you say they call you when they need you. So a question for you. So I'm going to throw some. Can I call you for this? Can I call you for that? All right.
Oh Lord.
Yes. So people, it's like, well, what do we call you for? But you know, there's always a misconception that if anything goes wrong, you all are supposed to show up. The NAACP is supposed to be there, but you're saying we are there. You don't see us, but we are there. So, a question for you, which I did not reach out to you all, so I don't want anyone to say, why didn't I call you all when I was dealing with Slice? So even though you're the New Haven chapter, and I did the call to action to to stop the violence of the pizza bar that was in Hamden,
Mhm.
could I have called the NAACP to say, partner with Connect because we want to move forward on this initiative to challenge their liquor license in court? Is that something I could have called the
Absolutely.
NAACP for?
Absolutely. And so we do get calls like that. Can you
Okay.
partner with us? I got a call today, and can you part with people, officials from Hamden, about really trying to get the word out and get more people, Black and brown people, to have access to the vaccine and what ways to, can you partner with us, help us? So we get calls daily. Can you partner with us, or this is an issue? Now, if a person has a complaint, that's different. So if you have a complaint, which we got a complaint. We get daily complaints and daily things, and it's not always for something bad. Sometimes it's to help advance or move things forward. But for instance, if someone has a complaint, we have a complaint form. We have a legal redress committee We are not lawyers, but we do have a whole full legal redress committee that can look at various complaints. And you do have to fill out the paperwork and give us the details to support your complaint, because
Okay.
you have to have information. But if people call us to say this is happening, can you collaborate with us? Can you partner with us? Can NAACP support this, that, or the other? You give us the details. We are happy to do that. And a lot of what we do through collaboration and partnership, because we depend on each other and there's power in numbers, strength in numbers. So certainly the NAACP can and will show up to support various efforts in our community. And we do all
Okay.
the time.
Dory,
Thank you. Because, people
thank
are
you. Yeah,
always asking those
definitely.
questions.
Yeah, definitely. I've since I've known you, you've always been busy. I mean, you are everywhere, and you send out, invites to every organ. I'm like, no, Dory, I can't. There's so much, you know. So you talked about being a mom. And now your children are grown and you have a beautiful granddaughter. And so,
Yes.
I, but how does that not interrupt your life? How do you balance all of that? Because at what point, because you talk a lot about being active in church, but at what point did you sit and say, I want to get involved in my community? You're in high school, and so, or even younger. And so, at what point did you say, I want to get involved in my community? And what was the pivotal moment that made you say that? And then, as a wife and as a mother, how do you balance all of that?
So again, growing up, I've always been into the art, the culture. I was a dancer. I always cared about uplifting my community. And I really started thinking about, I don't know where that seed was actually planted, um, but maybe it was planted through the Black Panther Party. I just watched the movie and thought about that because I was in the inner city and I was part of the youth that they fed and they taught
Mhm.
positive affirmations. So I was that girl. I was there, so I witnessed that. And I remember um, the Black Expo in those days and talking about Black is beautiful and I am powerful. So I don't know if maybe that was the seed that was planted. I don't know if in high school I got so many opportunities to participate in phenomenal efforts that would come through our city and they would pick different students. I would always volunteer and there are going to extra curricular programs at Yale's Afro Am House after school in high school. But somewhere something came and it was just a part of who I am. And it just was natural that I would give back to my community, that I would be a part of lifting my community, that I was blessed for others who did things in my community. And therefore I felt an obligation to do my part and uplift. So I don't ever remember a time where I did not feel some kind of obligation to do and give back and be a part of anything that was uplifting. And so I just think it's who I
Yeah.
am. And balance now. I will say, I wish, when you look back, I'm not that great at balance. And anything I do, I go too hard and I don't have boundaries. And so I get 1,000 calls and emails and I'm trying to respond to everything. And I know I've even given advice to younger women and younger people, learn to say no. It's okay. You don't have to say yes to everything. But I don't think I've taken my advice very well. And
You have not.
I'm trying to get to a point. I actually say the only time I ever really shut down is when I'm out of the country, or if even I'm on vacation. If it's something important, I'm in a corner somewhere on a phone call doing stuff for the NAACP. There are times, even when my children were younger, I got them involved with the NAACP. So anything I did, they were right there with me. So that was a way that I kind of included my family, and they had wonderful experiences. But at some points, I don't know. It's like when I look back, I kind of wish that I had learned how to balance things just a little bit better. And even though my children are grown and my husband's very supportive, sometimes he's looking at me like it's time, it's time for you to start passing that torch, because he sees that in the evenings I'm up answering calls and doing emails and planning programs.
So
So I'm not
Dory,
good at it.
so when you go out, we asked this question last podcast to Gary Winfield, to Senator Gary Winfield. Is there are times that we try to have balance in our life where Kathy's not always an advocate for autism, and sometimes I don't want to be Reverend Cooper, I just want to be Odell based on the setting, or I don't want to be the mother. Oh, I recognize you, you're the mother that I don't want to say I'm the mother who lost her son, who was murdered, and now I'm Debbie Downer for the party, or the event that we're at. I don't always want to carry that torch or that label. So when you go out, are you always the NAACP president, Dory, or can you just be Dory?
So when I'm out, I feel like I'm always the president, but I do have like a group, a circle of friends, including Kathy and others that are my reprieve, and where we all kind of just get together and say, okay, we're not talking about kids, family, organizations. We're just going to enjoy ourselves. And that's within my small circle of friends. And I have, a few families. But for the most part, when I go out and people see me, I can't get away from it because people see you and they want to grab your ear or talk about this or that. Um, so that doesn't happen a lot in when I'm in Connecticut or in the New Haven area. But I do try to make an effort time to time to just have a self care day or a
Okay.
pamper day, and that happens.
And you have to have that. You have to have that. I know Odell asked you about what NAACP does. So, as you know, in our sorority, the our international office determines our programs and our outlook for the
Mhm.
time that office is in. Who determines the outlook or the plan for the local NAACPs? Is it everyone's working on the same initiatives, or do you determine local level? Who makes that determination?
So it's a combination. So we have the national president and the board of directors. They set and they have directors. But we also, when we go to the national conventions, the delegates vote on resolutions that we bring back to our communities that we all agree as a body of things that we should address. And so that happens annually. And then there are also, we do, like, what might be important for one community is not as important for another. So locally, we do have, the authority to say, well, this is very important in addressing our specific community. So we'll address issues that come up, that arise right here in our community that may not be something that the national NAACP is looking. We also have like the Washington Bureau. So we do have people who are employed that go to that are in Washington D.C. looking at the legislation, looking at laws. They're grading the different states on the various issues, and they kind of give us a card on our state, annually, so then we know how to address things. If so how we address things does come from our national office, but we also have authority at the state level and locally to address things that come up that we feel are important to our community.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Great. Great.
Uh, Quite another question for you. You there?
Mhm.
Can you hear
Yep,
me?
I can.
So one of the things, a couple of questions for you. So Kathy and I were, as we were planning our podcast, right? We were talking about, I was wondering if, okay, so let's just do this. In the church,
Hmm.
okay, all of us go to church, and there are people who go to church and will give offerings and show up every Sunday, but they're not a member of the church.
Hmm.
And then when somebody dies, they want to be able to have the service at the church. And then they find out, well, you don't get the same privileges because you're not a member. You have to pay a certain price to have your loved one here. And then they get all uppity. They get all upset
Mhm.
because one, they're very emotional because of the passing of a loved one. But now they realize I've been here all this time, been doing this, but they're not a member. All right.
Mhm.
So as our guy says, can I push it? So what happens, Dory? What happens when someone says, I support the NAACP, I show up at your functions, but I'm not a member, but they knock on the door and they say, we want you to be able to handle this problem. Is there a difference in being a member and supportive? Do they get the same support, the same response from
So
the
unlike our sororities and fraternities, the NAACP, you do not have to be a member to get our support. You do
okay.
not get special
Okay.
privileges, but membership is the lifeblood of the NAACP. To become a member of the NAACP is only $30 annually. People go to lunch and spend $30. So be a member. That's how we stay open. That's how we get the work done. So we encourage people to be a member. But if you are in need and you put in a complaint, it is not going to matter if you are a member or not. We are going to address it. You're going to get the same support. So no, it's not like that with the NAACP, but we encourage membership because that's
Okay.
how, we get the work done and that's how we keep the doors open.
Well, Odell and I were even talking about,
So
when I
what
was
are the
growing up.
benefits of being a member? Because I know you breaking up, Kathy?
No, I'm good.
Okay. What's the benefits of being a member?
So, well, first of all, if you're a member, certainly, when we have certain events or, certainly if you're a life member, you get certain privileges, but an annual member is separate. So life membership, certainly, and life membership is very important. We encourage people to become life members. So there are privileges at that level and higher levels, and we certainly will make a big deal. But the whole point of the NAACP, and we talk about, we are a grassroots organization. Now, many of us, including you, Odell, you're a member of Delta Sigma Theta, we're a member of Alpha Kappa. We know how much our dues, our responsibilities are. So when we tell people that we are merely asking for $30 per year to support the work of the NAACP, and that helps us to keep doing the work, we try to let people understand how important that is, and try to let them know that is how we do this grassroots work. That is how we, bring about change and advancement. And so it benefits everyone, and we need the support. So it's more because we really need the support to keep the doors open and do the work. But really, if anyone has an issue, we never turn our back on them if they're a member or not.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay.
That's true. So, Dory, again, needless to say, you're active, right? I know often that you will meet with political figures or even presidents of colleges. What's the purpose of that? Why do you do that?
You're breaking up a little.
I know that you're very active. And so often I know that you meet with political figures as well as college presidents. What is the purpose
Yep, you're
of you
breaking
doing
up.
that? Okay, I'm not showing anything on my end,
So
Kevin.
we meet quite often with university presidents, the local college presidents, and our local officials. And most times we're talking about the agenda of the NAACP. We want to ask questions. And I should say this, part of the work that we do is to ensure political, educational, social, health, and economic equality across the board. So we're always talking about those issues, whether we're talking to a hospital president, a university president, a company president, the mayor. Those are things that we keep in the possession of the NAACP. So one, we want to have a good relationship with all of these people, but we also want to know that we're going to hold them accountable. We're going to ask the hard questions, and we're going to be advocating. And we want to look, so we'll look at the data to see if, so just to say you have diversity and inclusion, but you're not making any real change, it's just a department or a nice name, is not sufficient. Let's look at your board. Let's look at the people that are at the highest level. Let's look at like your hiring practices. So those are kinds of things that we talk to the presidents of college and universities and the local officials. And so we also try to be a partner and support the things that we think are working well. So it's not always like we're questioning like why this, why that. Sometimes we're coming with solutions. We're coming with
Mm-hmm.
what we think will be helpful. And so that goes on all the time. And a lot of it is to really continue to move forward with the mission of the NAACP. We need to have a even playing field. And until we get to that point, our job and our work is never done. And we're always looking for opportunities to even that playing field. So that's the work we do year round.
I think we have to say that so often. You can never
Yes.
say it enough, right? Now, you talk about the well being of the Black community. What does that mean? When you say that, the well being of the Black community, what does that mean?
Exactly.
What does that mean to you?
So so that means a lot of things. So let's just say this. COVID-19, because of, you know that we had this disproportionate amount of people, they say 25 to 50% in the Black and Brown community, and we were dying at the highest rates. Now, the reason why is because of the underlying conditions, the chronic health conditions. The thing that the people don't know is the NAACP has been talking about this. We have reports on this. We have data on why it just it magnified it through COVID-19. But these issues are not new. So when we talk about health disparities, when we talk about health access, and we talk about education and education gaps, these are things that we have been talking about, pushing for, demanding better. COVID-19 just this it magnified the problem, put a bright light on it. But these are issues that the NAACP has been addressing for 112 years. This is nothing new. The work that we do and the efforts
Mhm.
we want and the movement and advancements we want to see in our community. We are advocating for better health care, for better education, for better jobs, for housing, for better transportation. Transportation is a big issue. Not everyone could afford a car, and people have to work. They get a job. We have buses that stop running, and then how do the people get back to their families? So we advocate for better transportation. So when you look at the infrastructure of our cities, or you look at the gaps, those are the things in the work of the NAACP that we are trying to close the gaps and talk to the officials and talk to the people who make the laws and hold them accountable. So
That's
we
right.
do a lot of work
Okay.
to get people registered, but we also try to do the work of educating them around their voice and using their voice and their power of their vote to hold our local officials accountable as well.
So, Dory, you talk about partnerships. And yes, I know from the national level that there is a partnership with Delta Sigma Theta Sorority
Yes.
Incorporated.
Yes.
And we are encouraged to be members, and we talk about it every year. And we have a representative who works with your local chapter who makes sure we have the information. So, what's the importance of that? So people are listening and they some join, some do not. What's the importance of having that partnership? And what other fraternities, sororities other than, university presidents do you have a partnership with?
So we actually have an MOU, so a partnership with the complete Divine Nine around voter registration, education, and mobilization.
Okay.
And I think all of the Divine Nine presidents understand just how important the vote and the power of the vote and educating. So that's something that we have with all of the organizations. And that's
Okay, good.
something also that we think is very important. And we saw how even though, and we were so proud and elated that she happened to be a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated with our first vice president. But we also know that it took the full Divine Nine support. It wasn't just
That's
Alpha
right.
Kappa Alpha. We needed everyone to understand how important it is. And so when you look online and you saw all the groups, it was the full Divine Nine getting people registered, encouraging people to vote. So that's important. There was a lot of power, and now we can see that 91% of the vote were black women and people that really showed up and showed out. And so that partnership is extremely important, and we don't want that to die. We want to keep that energy for every election, not just the presidential election, but all politics are local. And so we need people showing up to the polls, and we need the full divine nine of partnership to help us get the work done and get people to the polls. So that's important. We also have great partnerships with various hospitals. And we talk about these tough issues. We're talking about these disparities. And so we have initiatives like at the state and local level around hiring more teachers of color and recruiting them, from HBCU. So that's something we've had summits on that. We've had different college presidents come right here to New Haven to
Okay.
talk about the importance and how to attract and recruit more people of color, because quite often we get to think, well, we don't have enough teachers of color who want to come to New Haven or that we can hire, or the greater New Haven. I'm not going to just say New. And so we work on that as an initiative. And then we work on, so the NAACP had a wonderful program for down payment assistance where we were giving out one time 15,000, it went down to 10,000 down payment assistance for people to buy their home, because we know that there's barriers. So people may have a good job, but they didn't have enough so that they can have the down payment to buy a house. So they live in it. We helped NAACP locally. I'm so proud. We were able to help hundreds of people with that down payment assistance program. We also had a program around economics where we were helping small businesses and helping them through the process of business loans. So when we talk about this work, this is something that we do, and we can only do that with partnership. We
Okay.
don't have the money, but we partnered with a grant that provided that so that we could offer that to people in the community.
So, Dory, does the NAACP New Haven chapter still have that partnership of helping young 31-year-old mothers who are moving out of their mother's house, help them find and put money down for a deposit?
So we are
Notice how I
with
say that, right? Now, let me be
Yes.
clear. Do you have, is this
so that
program,
down payment assistance program. So
is
we
this,
are in the process, as a matter of fact, we're hoping to get refunded because it was very successful. So we've had this program for well over 5 years, but the money runs out and then we have to look
okay.
for more funding. So we are in the process of getting it. We're hoping that we can get it funded because we have a success record. We have the data to show our program works.
Sucky,
So
sucky.
we're working on that, and we were hoping in this first quarter to get good news about more funding so that we can continue our program. Because again, the proof is that most of the people we help, because we don't just we also give them classes, make sure they understand about budgeting and insurance and the things that are needed. So we also offer those classes, and so it was quite successful, and we're trying to get additional funding. Hopefully, in this first quarter. So by maybe the end of next month, we'll hear some good news about continuing.
So, Dory, please, oh please, as
You
James
know
Brown
what?
says, please, 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 if you get that program refunded,
You were so silly.
And it's
You were
significant.
silly.
We will put it out there.
I
I will make sure you get it, but we will
well,
advertise it. We
You
will.
I have a.
know,
Listen, Kathy,
that
you love my
31-year-old
daughter.
you're talking about will be watching this
Listen, I
podcast
know
and will kill
Kathy
you.
loves my daughter, and they're like in sync and partnership. She doesn't watch my
So,
podcast. She does
well,
not
good
watch
thing,
my
because she would have killed
podcast,
you with that
so I
one.
can talk about her. So, so Dory, I have a candidate, and
You know what?
and I
Next question.
no seriously, this is about.
Listen.
I got
I'm
a
telling
candidate.
you.
So I'm gonna say
So
I got a candidate for you. Okay.
and we will be ready. We will be ready. Just give us to about another month. We can get that refunded, and we're ready to go.
That's funny. You know, ever
Thank you.
since
So, Dory, a quick
you,
interruption question. And this is not to diminish Black Lives Matter, but it exploded overnight. It the George Floyd, the murders, the Breonna Taylors, um, we knew that systemic racism was happening and we knew it was going on. But again, with social media and being able to videotape and show things virtually as they're happening is changing our world and how we respond. So Black Lives Matter interrupted our lives overnight. How has that impacted? I know it has. What has been the NAACP's response and partnership to that? Now, I ask you that question because, you know, this young group of Black Lives Matter folks, they were very intentional about feeling that the way that the civil rights movement, the way that Black organizers, the way that we organized before was not the way they want to organize today. They rejected the voices of our legends. Who wanted to come out and speak with them, and they were like, no, we don't want your support because that's not the initiative that we want to lead. And when I took a look at the movie the other night on Marian Anderson, the group of young people that were coming behind and supporting Martin Luther King felt that the NAACP was old and stagnant and said, we don't care about the history, the past. We want to do things differently. And I remember in the movie, they challenged her. They challenged it, that era. They challenged all entertainers and said, we don't want you to perform in places that are segregated. Some people said, yes, we support you, and others said no. And Miriam Anderson was one that initially said, no, I will not do it because I need to put food on the table. And then when she showed up to the concert, it was empty seats. And I remember seeing that, and then she changed her tune. So people feel that the NAACP is not aligned with Black Lives Matter. I know this young group is probably saying, you're old, you're historic, we want to do things differently. How have you connected and responded to that mission?
So having a group come together and reject and not wanting the NAACP to be at the table or to be the lead is nothing new. That's part of the history. And we still stand strong and support them. I support Black Lives Matter. I show up at their events. I let them know we have the same mission. We have the same end goal. And you don't need just one organization to get to that goal. So we're going to work it our way. You can work it your way. You can support us when you want to, and sometimes they do, and we'll support what you do. And so I don't think it needs to be one or the other. I think that everyone that is doing this work that wants to have our lives to matter, have people to see us, to value us, is important. And so I don't feel like it's one or the other. And,
Okay.
I have had conversations with them. I've been on panels with them. I have a lot of respect for them. And I think they have respect for me as a leader. They may not like the structure of our organization, and that's fine because we're going to move forward. We're still here. We're still going to do this work. And I support what they do. So I don't think it needs to be one or the other. And I definitely support Black Lives Matter and their mission. And I don't agree with everything. And when I don't, I let them know that. And I respectfully let them know that. But
Mhm.
for, overall, what they want, I think we want the same. And
Have
Thank
you
you.
ever had to, I'm glad you said that, because have you ever had to, as the president, had to address an issue um, in a manner that needed to be addressed that way for NAACP, but didn't necessarily agree with your own personal views?
so there's times when, as the NAACP, there's times like we really, if we want to do a march or a rally, or if it's something that really is important to us, we have to get the permission from the national office. And there are times when, like through COVID-19, I understood, and Black Lives Matter may have had other restrictions, but we could not organize because of COVID-19. We're advocating to keep our community safe. We're advocating that people stay home, wear your mask. And then you have, we understood why people were in the streets. And we personally, I was there at almost every march, but I had to be there as Dory. I could not be there
Oh.
to organize for the NAACP because we really had to, we could not, that would be like speaking out of, both sides of our mouths. And we had to say, listen, we support what you're doing. We're doing it through legislation. We were doing it through law. We were going to court. We were having, major panel discussions and series and different things. But the NAACP did have restrictions that the Black Lives Matter did not, because we were under mandate that if we're advocating for people to be safe and wear masks and not to do that, then we can't tell people to go out in the streets and do that. So,
Mm-hmm.
so individually we could do what we wanted. We just could not do it as an organization. And so there's times when like I feel strongly like we need to be out there, and I just made a choice for myself. I'm gonna be out there. The NAACP
Mm-hmm.
can't be out there. That's fine because we don't have to be the. We have been in the past, but it's good to see other people organizing a march and a rally. It does not have to be the NAACP. It doesn't have to be one group. But I support what they were marching for. I support that we needed an outlet around that time, which is why I got out there with the young people and I marched, in general with people who cared enough. But I couldn't do it as an NAACP.
Mm-hmm.
And and Kathy, that pretty much goes in line with, well, you too, Dory, with our sorority. That we have restrictions that we're not allowed to meet and have activities in person. That we have
Mm-hmm.
to be virtual. We have been asked to support and to do the in different events, and we've had to say no to them because we can't gather collectively as a sorority, but as individually, just don't wear your colors. You, as an
That's right.
individual, you can go out there, and that's where you can be. And I'm sure that's where, and I hope people really listen to this podcast. We're going to make sure we publicize it, because when I was telling people that we were having you on today, they were like, great, ask her where they've been with George Floyd. Where's the NAACP with
Mm-hmm.
this? And where are they with that? And I'm like, are you a member?
Yeah, and one, which is a great question, but two, we are making statements. We are like, and if they look at the national office, which I think through COVID-19, through the series, through Zoom, and all this new stuff that we've been doing for this past year, we were addressing issues. Our national president had the experts. We were in these cities at these courtrooms. So we do it through the courtrooms and through legislation and through series and having, hard conversations. And he is been on every platform that there is out there. So if they look for the NAACP, they'll find us. They just can't find us doing the day to day coming out in the streets because that's just a mandate that we were not able to do. But we were there. We were still doing the work.
Odell,
Thank
let
you.
me
That's so
ask you a
important for
question.
folks to hear. But
Yeah.
I have one
Oh,
last
you
question.
have one last question
Uh
because I
oh.
have a
See, she
question for
always
you.
does this, Dory.
I do, but then you can
Yes,
ask the
ma'am.
same question, Dory. So I want to ask you a question. So along the same lines of what I just asked Dory, has there ever been a time where maybe politically or personally you felt like addressing an issue one way, but then you had to remember the REV in front of your name, that you are Reverend Odell? So did you have to address it differently, um, other than Odell? Did you? Or a time that you thought maybe your children thought you shouldn't have addressed an issue that you did address it? Either way, has there ever been a time like that?
There's been a lot of times like that.
Okay.
So for instance, I'll just go back and say with the slice,
Mm-hmm.
wanting to stop the violence with slice. I was angry, and as I talk about it, that I had mental. I call them the cousins. I had PTSD, and then all the cousins showed up. Depression, anxiety, and everybody else was living in my body and taking over. So I had a high sense of anxiety and anger, and just always wanting to fight and trying to deal with my pain. And what I wanted to do was to stop the violence at Slice Pizza Bar. Because, as I mentioned in the presentation, Kathy, if you heard that for 5 years, every Friday night, a black man was shot. 5 years in this neighborhood. And it was numb. And I'll take ownership for that. I was numb to that until it happened to me. And the police told us that they had over 100 phone calls a month, 911 calls from that area every month. But it kept happening over and over and over. And after that traumatic interruption, I wanted to stop the violence. And my daughter said she didn't support me because she had friends who would go to Slice Pizza Bar on Sunday and would, eat their pizza and would watch television and sports and stuff. On Sunday, had a different environment than it did Friday night. And she didn't support me. She felt that I was using the reverend and my community connections to shut the place down, and she didn't want to be associated with it. So she's like, "You don't have my support." And I did not have her support. But I went forward with it anyway. And even now, doing interruptions, I don't have her support. She's like, "I don't know why you just don't sit down, be quiet, and just heal." you know just
Mm-hmm.
just relax. And I can't, so I don't have my daughter's support. And I use the reverend before my name. I use my story, my voice, my connections that I have, and to continue to make change. But it's not always welcome, as you said, Dory. It's not welcome, and I don't have my daughter's support. And I tell her, you're like your daddy, you just want me to sit around and be here for you. But that's not going to happen. I'm going to do something different.
I never thought about that though for her to have to deal with her friends and the feedback of that. Right? I really never thought about that. Dory, has that happened with you
Yeah.
in the place of you being the president of the chapter and then having to deal with a political issue? Have your children ever said to you, Ma, do you really have to fight everything? Or, I don't think you should do it this way. Have they ever disagreed at all with you?
They haven't. Oh, they don't normally disagree with me. But there are times when I'm doing things and they're like, okay, enough already. A lot. But it's just because it's never an off time. It's always on, and it's just I'm done with one thing. Here comes something else. So they disagree more because it's just it takes all of my time and my energy, but
Okay.
not because of the actual topic or the issue that I'm addressing.
Okay. And what about you, Kathy? You have the same. I'm throw your question, though your curveball question at you. What are the things that you've done that your husband and your daughter say, really? Because I know when church was in session, I saw you there all the time. You was just busy during the Ma'afa season, over and
Yeah.
over.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then, Dory, we go to church one day, right? And I forget that it's, health Sunday or go red something. And we get to wear our gym outfits. We go to church. I look up in the pulpit. There goes Kathy in her pink and green, jumpsuit. She's doing her thing. And I'm
Okay.
like, go sit with your family. So, do they ever say to you, Kathy, come on, mom, really? Why can't you just wear that fur coat and just sit with us and just look cute and be nice and we'll pick you up in the car?
Well, I will say yes, I get that a lot from my husband. Not so much Teal because she loves to be there with me. So anytime I'm out, she wants to be out as well. So she definitely loves being involved in church. But there are times where my husband will say, "Is everything your responsibility? Do you have to take on everything?" And I find myself saying yes more than I do no, because
Okay,
as you both said, we have a role to play. I think that we were given these stories to share and given these positions
we
so
do.
that we can make a difference. And then I will be ready to pass on the torch one day, I hope, to someone else. But until then, until I feel comfortable and letting that torch go, I think that there's still things in my life that I need to do. And so hopefully I know he understands that. Is it always easy to take? No. But I know he understands it. Oh, Dory, with Odell and I, it's funny because we
And
talked
that's the
to our,
challenging part. And I have to hold on, Kathy.
yeah,
Kathy, I got one more thing for you. As we're talking about this, the part that I have to respect with my daughter is that as I do interruptions, to me, I'm able. It's no long not my son's murder was the initiator. Now it's become bigger. It becomes mental health.
hmm,
And us not talking about it, and we needing the help that we need to get as people of color. So it has now have a different look. But for her, as she said to me, it's still a reminder that my brother is not here. And it's painful for her to
yeah,
see it.
yeah,
So one of the discussions that we had was she says, I think it will be best if I don't always see you doing interruptions in the house. If I don't
mm,
always see you, then it's not a constant reminder for me. Because I don't watch your podcast and I'm not going to see the production. But living with me and watching me do this in my office because of COVID and where we are, it's a constant reminder that her brother was murdered. So that is why we are initiating a move out party.
you know
I
what?
got you. I got you, Odell.
You know what? I'm telling. I'm gonna call her
she,
after
she
this
doesn't watch these
podcast.
podcasts.
I'm gonna call her anyway.
Um,
So our last guest, we had Senator Winfield on, and we shared with him that now, especially now, since Vice President Kamala Harris got into office, everyone wants to jump into the political arena. And we know that people have their own spiritual gifts, that maybe not everyone is meant to jump into the political arena. But in what other ways do you encourage people to get involved in their community other than running for a
So
senator? Or,
I think
go,
that people can get involved in many ways. They can get involved. They can be on commissions and on boards because you always need support around that. They can get involved with the NAACP. They can get involved with the Urban League. There's so many groups and organizations that are doing good work and really doing the work to advance our community. So I think there's lots of ways that people can use their energy, their support, their financial support, because all of the organizations need membership, need support around finances and fundraising. So there's lots of ways that people can get involved. I also encourage people who choose to get involved with your church. Use that as an outlet because the church is not four walls. It's really going outside into the community. So there's lots of ways that people can get involved. I do encourage people to run for office. I do think that more people should try. A lot of people complain, but I think we do need more people to run, and it's not for everyone, and it's a lot of work, and it's hard work, and it's not a lot of off time with that either. So maybe not at a senator or a representative or mayor, but there's other positions that people can run for, really bring about change we want to see, because sometimes we have people in office and we try to hold them accountable, but they don't do the things that support our community. So if they keep doing that, we need to vote them out. But we got to have other people that are willing to step up that will serve. So I do think that's important. But again, it's not for everyone. But there's ways that people can get.
that's true. That's true. Is there anything from your upbringing that you learned that helped you be the success that you are today?
I don't know anything from my upbringing. I do think that it was important that I always had support. I always had people cheering me on, showing love, no matter what the situation was. So I think that I knew no matter what I did, my family was always going to still love me. So that was important, I think, growing up. But I really think that people we pour into, it doesn't have to be a family member, but I try to pour into young people anywhere I am because I think it's important. And you never know, people come back and say, I remember when you did this or said that or encouraged me through this. And, even from my children, I exposed them to a lot of things, and my daughter was open to it, and my son was not. But now that he's a grown man, he looks back and he said, Mom, you know what? I get it now. I appreciate what you did. It was not easy. He pushed back on everything I tried with him, where my daughter would always be down for things. So, I think that I still poured into him, and it just touches my heart when now he'll say to me, now I get it. I appreciate it. But it took him to be 30 to get it, but he gets.
Okay. All right. So, Dory, what Odell and I try to do is expose that a life interruption can sometimes be traumatic or just an interruption of our lives that can be temporary or permanently affect our perspective on life. We'll continue to discuss the impact of trauma and how a moment in time can alter your planned journey. But we also discuss that there's a time where we need to move towards healing. Our podcasts are for everyone who needs to hear the message. Today's podcast was the last of our Black History celebration, and what better way than to have you as our guest. You are a woman, the first African American woman to be the president of the New Haven chapter of the NAACP, and we could not be more proud to have you on our show. But what we hope is that when people hear your story, that they feel a new sense of energy, and that it encourages them to get involved in the community. We just want to make sure that we thank you for all that you do, and that you know that we're here continually supporting you and the NAACP and praying for all the efforts that you do in the community. We also want to thank our listeners for coming on, and not to forget, please make sure that they subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this message with everyone that you know, because someone you know may need to hear it. So again, Dory, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dory.
Thank you, ladies, for having me. And again, thank you for this space. I think what you're doing is wonderful. I wish you well as you move forward with your podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.